Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Health Corner. My name is Atishay Jain, and today we have a very special guest who will be joining us on today's episode of the Mental Health Corner. Mr. Jason Baseden is the Director of Physical Education and Athletics from Phillips Exeter Academy. Mr. Baseden has previously served as the Director of Athletics at a various number of institutions and has a demonstrated history of working in primary and secondary education. He is skilled in coaching, lesson planning, educational technology, fundraising, and leadership. He comes with a background of strong community and strong services, both from the professional level and from the educational level. As a longtime educator and himself, he has firsthand experienced the importance of mental health on the field, in the classroom, and beyond. Mr. Baseden, thank you so much for being here and welcome to today's podcast.
Atishay, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baseden. To get things off, would you like to share a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in the field of athletics, and the importance of mental health for you?
Yes, absolutely. Originally, I was raised by educators out in Beaverton, Oregon. And there I was a three-sport athlete and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to run track at St. John's in New York City. From there, I fell back on my education and moved into the television world and worked at Universal Television in Los Angeles and Discovery Channel in New York, and had an opportunity to work on the Tour de France and Europe. And basically, while in France, I met someone who was a dean of students at the American School of Paris. And he introduced me back to sport in high school. And from there, I just realized that athletics and educational athletics in particular were where my passion was. And then I really made a career change in my early 30s. But in this conversation, mental health is really the most important thing that anyone can your mental health and your mental capacity is really what any and all of us need to live our successful lives, and success is in the eye of the beholder. And so, for me, I had to take a lot of risks because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do exactly with myself, and making a risk to move abroad and move to France, for example, or move to Belgium. Those were all risks that I took, but I was fortunate to be in a good mental state when I was able to make those decisions. But the work that we do now is in athletics, your mental state of mind is paramount to success in athletics, and especially for the student athlete, where that needs a balance, their academic work and curiosities with their athletics, both individually and for their team.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights. It's really great to see the role of mental health, that it plays in today's society, especially, given the COVID-19 pandemic. Many students, including myself, have found athletics as almost an escape, especially for those students who are not as dedicated to athletics as their counterparts. For instance, for example, me. So I'm part of the cycling team at Exeter, and I just use cycling as a way of escaping whatever things that might be giving me stress in my daily life. So thank you so much for sharing that experience. When I was looking up research for our conversation, I came across a really interesting statistic. According to the National Federation of State High School Associations, upwards of 31% of young adolescents today experience some sort of anxiety disorder. How do you think, as a longtime educator, we can account for that statistic? In our previous conversations, you had mentioned how when you were in school growing up, there was almost a stigma behind discussing your own mental health experiences. So for instance, if you were to have more transparent conversations when you were growing up, Do you think that that might have sort of alleviated that sort of anxiety that came with being a student athlete?
Yes, absolutely. This was, before races, before competitions, before, or just being in classes where, I might not felt like math class was a challenge for me. I had a lot of anxiety in math. And I think if I was able to speak to someone or to learn some tools in managing my own anxiety, I feel like it would have helped immensely. I think the numbers are probably going up as well because a lot of I find in education a lot of youth are specializing more in specific areas than they have in the past as well. And I think that just in general, the academic world is more and more challenging. I think in specific environments. I think, students, for example, at Phillips Exeter Academy, they're all striving to go to the highest rated universities in the world. And those are, on occasion, it's not necessarily your ability that gets you, or, that you wouldn't get into a school. It may be they've got to fill in certain seats, or there's just not enough spaces. And I think that pressure that creates a lot of extra pressure for students today.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. So, as far as from the student athlete's perspective, focusing on high school itself, what kind of resources would you recommend athletes to take advantage of? Or what type of resources would you recommend schools to implement so that athletes can take advantage of them in the long run?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is you have to share your feelings. Now, if there's whether it's a teammate, a close friend, it doesn't even have to be somebody on your team. I think it's important to share how you feel, and because no one, if the more you share, you don't feel alone. So, for example, if I would have been able to share with my friends when I was stepping on the line to run the 800 meters, they all knew, how nervous I was, and I feel like that would have certainly helped. I feel like as an institution or institutions, we need to be, we should be able to recognize or be able to support any student that feels like they have some performance anxiety. Personally, getting our coaches some more skill sets in managing performance psychology. I personally wish we had a performance psychologist on campus, because I feel like that could benefit not only the athlete but the student when they're getting ready to perform on stage or about to perform to take tests. There are skills that we can apply in those moments. So I think that this is something, the anxiety numbers are going up around the world, not only for the student but for the adult, and the more tools we have in our toolbox to manage this, I think the better prepared we will be, not only as the adults on campus, but also the student body.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights. I found it really interesting on how you mentioned basically attributing a certain level of education for coaches to give them the skill sets to recognize, for example, anxiety. So, what do you think that could look like? Would that mean incorporating some sort of third party organization to provide some sort of webinars or seminars for coaches to take advantage of? Or, as you mentioned, like hiring a specialized person who deals with performance anxiety, et cetera? What do you think would be the most effective way that institutions can make the change?
Well, I think the most effective way would be to put two things in place. One is to make sure our coaches, yes, you either send coaches to professional development. Coaching development today has a strong emphasis on the mental health and managing mental health with your student athletes, or bringing in a third party individual, which we have done. We do provide professional development for our coaches. One of our challenges here is the time. Boarding schools, trying to find time within a boarding school schedule is extremely difficult, but this is a very important topic. So, and then I think if we have somebody on campus, and potentially we do have someone in our CAPS program, but having somebody on campus that specializes in performance psychology, I think, as I stated previously, would be something that we would all benefit from. And as I said, not just the student, but the adult as well.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for those viewers who might not be familiar with CAPS, CAPS refers to Counseling and Psychological Services. So most boarding schools and colleges will be equipped with a certain number of licensed clinicians who provide mental health support to the students on campus. Thank you so much again, Mr. Baseden, for sharing those insights. In the last couple of moments that we have together in this podcast, I was wondering if you could share your overall thought process that the pandemic has provided on students, especially from the athletic perspective. I had a lot of friends who were really big into athletics, and they were not able to, go to their practices and get those highlight videos to send to coaches to get recruited. So what perhaps hindrance do you think the pandemic has played on the mental health of students when it comes to performance, and what kind of correlation that could have as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it was a devastating experience for this generation of student athlete. I think a lot of times the student athlete identifies as with their sport, and they don't identify not only themselves, but others identify them as a hockey player, a soccer player, a runner, a basketball player. And so when they aren't able to participate in that which they identify with, or are, it really took a toll on the student athlete. It took a toll on their parents, because they basically, a lot of the student athletes have been doing this specific sport for 10 or more years. And so it was something that we just could never imagine, removing a full season or two or a whole year of sport. For many also, if you're in your junior class, that's a big year for you in terms of recruiting, and then you miss that opportunity. And for some sports, I'm thinking of indoor, the winter sports, they missed, I think the winter of 2021, and then the winter of 21-22 had a lot of, missed probably a third of games. And for the student athlete that's actually looking to compete in college, then there's new NCAA rules that created the transfer portal, and it made it even harder for a lot of students to be recruited. So COVID was, there's nothing comparable in terms of the impact it made on mental health. We're still seeing the remnants of that. We're working hard to support students and make sure that they're safe, first of all, but that they are able to compete, and we're trying to provide as many opportunities as possible for them to be seen. And I know our coaches are always working hard and building relationships with the colleges, so just to try to help the process.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on the pandemic. I think it's really important, as you mentioned earlier on in our conversation, especially given the COVID-19 pandemic, it just made it ever so paramount to reach out and communicate with other individuals. A common theme that I've had throughout my series so far in this podcast is this idea of communication, right? So you mentioned a little bit about your experiences growing up, and if you were having anxiety about, particular athletic competition, you would just go and vent to your friend or, vent to a parent or a guidance counselor or whatnot. In your opinion, when it comes to a student athlete, they're balancing so many things at once. I've seen how my friends who are really committed to their sport are balancing academics on top of athletics. And even in college, it's almost as if they're living a double life. How do you account for time management and the role that that plays and having the opportunity to just take a minute to think about how you can take care of yourself given such a busy schedule?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to listen to yourself. You have to listen to your body. You have to listen to how you feel. Second of all, you need to communicate and be a very good communicator, not only with your coach, but with your team captains. Um, it's really about communication and really, knowing yourself. If you need to take a break now, it's understandable. And we all need to take breaks. And on occasion there are moments where we've got to power through, but that's not all the time. There are moments where, for example, especially as a student athlete, if you have a lot of stress coming up, even if you are going to go to practice because that exercise and that movement's going to help you out. Communicate with your captains and your teammates and your coach. Hey, I've got a lot going on. I'm not all there, but I'm gonna come here and get some exercise. It'll help me out. But I just want to communicate so where my frame of mind is for the moment. I think that's something that students could improve on that level of communication. I also think our coaches are learning quickly that we need to be more attentive to those situations as well, and not be a hardcore coach who just you got to go, you got to fight through all the time. That's not the case. So I think we're going through an interesting time with the coach and the student athlete. We're all learning together. I think COVID had put us all in that situation, but I think we're learning and we're going to get there together.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I wanted to touch on one really interesting thing that is really novel to me as a high schooler currently. It's this idea of recruitment and the role that that plays for student athletes. Many of the high performing student athletes in high school, especially boarding schools, are looking to get recruited to be to compete at the collegiate level. I know you mentioned how you competed in track and field throughout college. So I was wondering if you could perhaps share your own experiences with the recruitment process and the role that mental health plays there, and perhaps your journey of being a student athlete throughout high school and into college.
Yeah, so everything has really changed. I mean, it's changed a lot since I was in school. Also, I ran track and I played football and basketball. I was recruited for football and track mostly. And but things have changed, and so it's really a totally different game today. A lot of so there are tools. So now there's a lot of things that go through film. The Huddle is a program which a lot of the student athletes, they make videos of themselves and they try to share those videos. Also social media, in specific sports, if you get one offer from a school, then you make sure you post that and you try to get other colleges to see. But it's I mean, this is where there's a mental health plays a huge role in this entire process. I think the pressure that a lot of this pressure is internal, people putting it on themselves. On occasion it can be parents who are put pressure on the students, which is not never a good thing. But really, I try to tell students, enjoy what you're doing, play the game for fun. college and the level of college that you're going to compete at, that is going to come. That is going to happen. We're fortunate in our environment. We've got athletic liaisons in the college office, and our coaches are well connected, so they're able to help with that path. But play the game because you love the game, and it brings you happiness. The college piece will happen if an athlete is at the collegiate level, opportunities will be there. But really try to avoid that stress and play the game because you love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It really provides me, especially, a look into the recruitment process and the role that mental health plays there. In the last couple of minutes that we have here, I was wondering if you could share your brief opinion on the importance of communication. I know you touched on it a little bit, but how you can be vulnerable with your experiences about mental health. This is more of a broader question and doesn't really focus on athletics itself,
Yeah.
but rather your role as an educator.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of what's happening today is um, it's okay. Vulnerability, it's okay to be more open today. I feel like on many levels. I feel like it's okay to be open and about one's emotions. Or feelings, or if there's something bringing them down, there's more an acceptance for people. And I as a man, especially, I feel like as a man, um I feel like there's no shame in having a conversation. I'm having a bad day or a down day or a down week or month. I need help. I think the idea that we can ask for help. There used to be a stigma, through most of my life. There's a stigma attached to that, and it's great to see that falling by the wayside. And so communication, as you were referring to, communicate. It's okay to, hopefully everybody has an avenue or someone they can reach out to when they need, and to get the professional help. I think also there's a lot more people out there that are studying, because there's a recognition that we need more professionals in the mental health industry. So that's what I mean by communicate, is like there are opportunities. You absolutely need to ask for help if you need.
Right. Well, Mr. Basin, I'd like to thank you so much again for your time today on the Mental Health Corner podcast. The experiences you share were invaluable to us, and we appreciate your time once again. If
Thank
there's
you.
anything else to add on, please feel free to.
No, keep doing the work that you're doing. I think this we're in a better place than we were 5 years ago because of individuals like yourself that are bringing this out, talking about it. The more people that talk about it, the more normalized getting health and mental health becomes. The discussion around mental health. So, thank you. Keep doing the good work.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a great night.
Good night.